This is Danny Palmer once again from Springfield, Missouri. I'm the teacher or rabbi of a small group called Yachad Qahal. We want to welcome you to these videos. We've been doing an ongoing series of these. As I've mentioned before, I'll keep doing this series until Yah tells me to move on to something else. But the series is on the covenant. And the covenant basically is the one thing that envelops everything else. And do a little summary. I always like to tie in the previous week's portion, and sometimes I'll tie in the following week coming up next week, but this week I probably won't touch on it too heavily. But going into last week's, Yaakov has returned from Haran with his wives, children, and livestock. He has settled matters with Laban and Esav, endured the sexual incident concerning Dinah's defilement and Rachel's death. The idols were buried, the 12th son Binyamin was born, and Yaakov settles in Hebron and abides there with his family. Yaakov now assumes the caretaking of his father Yitzchak, and now Leah becomes the wife who oversees the welfare of their family. She is honored later by being entombed with Avraham, Sarah, Yitzchak, and Rivka. You will find that in Genesis 49:31. The favored son of Yaakov now takes over as a major theme of the story. Now begins his chapter of the saga, which will be intertwined with Yehuda from now on. That is including today, folks. What I'm going to do today is slightly a little different. Once in a while I'll read a lot more scripture than I will other weeks. This week I'm going to read the entire Torah portion. It's important because it's going to play into everything I speak about. So I'm going to begin now with Bereshit, Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. Yaakov now dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Yaakov when Yosef was 17 years old. He kept sheep with his brethren, and the child was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Yosef brought into their father their evil, saying, Now Yisrael loved Yosef more than all his sons, because he begat him in his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And I'm going to stop here for a second because I'm going to deal with this. The coat of many colors. First off, the word many is not in the text. It's an added word. I'm not saying it's out of line, but it is an added word. The word coat that's used here is the Hebrew word kutone, Strong's number 3801. It means shirt, coat, garment, or robe. So any one of those words would be an appropriate choice. You will find, especially between the Christian and Jewish translations, essentially probably every one of these options. The other word is for colors. These are derived from these three Hebrew words: pasim, pasag, and pasas. Pasim means by the palm of the hand, the sole of the foot, long-sleeved, wide. By the palm of the hand, it's alluding to something that comes all the way down to the palm of the hand. By the sole of the foot, it means something that goes all the way down to the ankles or even lower. The other word, pasag, which is where the word pasim, which is plural. The word pasag is the palm of the hand or spread out. Now these words are going to factor into what happens to Israel, especially the house of Israel. It includes all 12 tribes, but it will especially affect the 10 tribes referred to now and since the time of the splitting of the kingdom as the house of Israel. The other word is pasas, means disperse, disappear, or cease. Now the word color didn't appear at all there in the Hebrew. It seems to probably come from the Greek word pokilos. It is Strong's number 4164. It means motley, various in character, diverse, or manifold. And that is probably where the word color is derived. And remember, those scribes who translated it into the Greek for the Septuagint were Jews. So, those Jews who went down and translated it for the Ptolemy family, that's the word they chose. There is some speculation that the Masoretic text is not as strong as it should be, and there may have been some changes since the 1st century or in that area because of some of the things they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran. But those are simply speculations. I wanted to let you know because this word pasas, especially in the Hebrew, meaning disperse, disappear, or cease, greatly involves the story from this point forward. I'm going to continue with verse 4. So when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, then they hated him, and they could not speak peaceably unto him. And Yosef dreamed a dream, and told his brethren, who hated him so much the more. For he said unto them, Hear, I pray you this dream which I have dreamed. Behold, now we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves compassed round about, and did reverence to my sheaf. Then his brethren said to him, What, shalt thou reign over us and rule us? Or shalt thou have altogether dominion over us? And they hated him so much the more for his dreams and for his words. Again he dreamed another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have had one more dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars did reverence to me. Then he told it unto his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him, and said unto him, What is this thy dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren come indeed, and fall on the ground before thee? And his brethren ended him, but his father noted the saying. Then his brethren went to keep their father's sheep in Shechem. Going back to Shechem. Remember that from last week's portion. That's where the sexual incident occurred with Dinah. And in this portion, Yosef has told his dreams, and he's either arrogant or he's a little naive when he tells this to his brothers and father. So remember, he's Dad's favorite son. There could be a little bit of a spoiled brat in his character. And his brothers aren't, the light of the world either. So, and Israel said unto Yosef, Do not thy brethren keep in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee to them. And he answered him, I am here. Then he said unto him, Go now, see whether it be well with thy brethren, how the flocks prosper, and bring me word again. So he sent him from the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. Then a man found him, for lo, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, What seekest thou? And he answered, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they keep sheep. And the man said, They are departed hence, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. Then went Yosef after his brethren, and found them in Dothan. And when they all saw him afar off, even before he came at them, they conspired against him for to slay him. For they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. And we will say, A wicked beast hath devoured him. Then we shall see what will become of his dreams. But then Reuben heard that he delivered him out of the hands, and said, Let us not kill him. Also Reuben said unto them, Shed not blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him. Thus he said, that he might deliver him out of their hand, and restore him to his father. And now when Yosef was come unto his brethren, they stripped Yosef out of his coat, his party-colored coat that was upon him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, without water in it. Then they sat down to eat bread, and lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, there came a company of Ishmaelites from Gilad, and their camels laden with spicery and balm and myrrh, and they were going to carry it down to Egypt. Then Yehudah said to his brethren, What availeth it, if we slay our brother, that we keep his blood secret? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and not let our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren obeyed. Here is where the intertwining with Yosef and Yehudah begins. Yosef is going to be sold, and Yehuda is the main entity behind which of the brothers decides this. Remember, Reuven has already spoke to the brothers and convinced them not to kill Yosef. And Yehuda goes upon this after Reuven has left and decides, hey, let's sell him. We won't have his blood on our hand, and we'll be rid of that little, troublemaker, spoiled brat. And maybe things will be different. And we won't even have to feel guilty about him being dead. But then the story gets a little worse. Then the Midianites, merchantmen, passed by, and they drew forth and lifted Yosef out of the pit, and sold Yosef to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, who brought Yosef into Egypt. Now here, this verse is quite interesting. It almost alludes to the brothers never end up with any money. Because it said the Midianites took him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites. Now these are related people, all related to the brothers, distant relatives. But these are tradesmen, caravans. Our Arab kinsmen are very famous for these in history. Afterward, Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Yosef was not in the pit. Then he rent his clothes and returned to his brethren and said, the child is not yonder, and I, whither shall I go? And they took Yosef's coat and killed the kid of the goats and dipped the coat in the blood. So they sent that party-colored coat, and they brought it unto their father and said, this have we found. See now whether it be thy son's coat or no. Then he said it, and he knew it. It is my son's coat. A wicked beast has devoured him. Yosef is surely torn in pieces. And Yaakov rent his clothes, and put sackcloth about his loins, and sorrowed for his son a long season. Then all his sons and his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he would not be comforted, but said, surely I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning. So his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, a eunuch of Pharaoh's, and his chief steward. Now, they don't seem to outright lie to Yaakov until when Yosef is dead. They let Yaakov jump to that conclusion by providing him with the evidence. And remember the goat that they kill here, that they put the blood on the garment with. Remember both of these aspects. And at that time Yehuda went down from his brethren and turned into a man called Hira, an Adullamite. And Yehuda saw there a daughter of a man called Shua, a Canaanite, and he took her to wife and went into her. So she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Er. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. Moreover, she bare yet a son, whom she called Shelah, and Yehuda was at Kezib when he bare him. Then Yehuda took a wife to Er, his firstborn son, whose name was Tamar. Now Er, the firstborn of Yehuda, was wicked in the sight of Yahweh. Therefore Yahweh slew him, and Yehuda said to Onan, go in unto thy brother's wife, and do the office of a kinsman unto her, and raise up seed unto thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. Therefore, when he went into his brother's wife, he spilled it on the ground, lest he should give seed to his brother. And it was wicked in the eyes of Yahweh, which he did. Wherefore he slew him also. Then Yehuda said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in thy father's house, till Shalach, my son, grow up. For he thought thus, lest he die as well as his brethren. So Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Apparently Yehuda was not aware of the wickedness of his two older sons, and he has assumed that it's Tamar that's causing them to die. Something must be wrong with Tamar. Maybe she's cursed or something. So he's not wanting to give his youngest son now to her to be her third husband. Also, Tamar is apparently a desirable woman, probably in all the areas, And in the process of time, also the daughter of Shua, Yehuda's wife, died. Then Yehuda, when he had left mourning, went up to his sheep shearers in Timnah, he and his neighbor Terach the Adulamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnah to shear sheep. Then she put her widow's garments off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat down in Patah Enam, which is by the way to Timnah, because she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. When Yehudah saw her, he judged her an whore, for she had covered her face. And he turned the way towards her, and said, Come, I pray thee, let me lie with thee. For he knew not that it was his daughter-in-law. And she answered, What wilt thou give me for to lie with me? Then he said, I will send thee a kid of the goats from the flock. And she said, Well, if thou wilt give me a pledge until thou send it. Then he said, What is the pledge that I shall give thee? And she answered, A signet, and thy cloak, and thy staff that is in thy hand. So he gave it her, and lay by her, and she was with child by him. Then she rose and went and put her veil up from her, and put on her widow's raiment. Afterward Yehudah sent a kid of the goats, there's the goat, by the hand of his neighbor, the Adulamite, for to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. Then asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the whore that sat in Enaim by the wayside? And they answered, There was no whore there. He came therefore to Yehudah again, and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said, There was no whore there. Then Yehudah said, Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. He sent the money in exchange to get his material back. But Tamar has a plan. There's a reason why she's not there to take the kid and return the other items. Because they're also going to be a major feature in things that also happened to Yosef. Remember, it was a ring, a cloak, and a staff. Now after 3 months, one told Yehudah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law hath played the whore, and lo, with playing the whore, she is great with child. Then Yehudah said, Bring her forth, and let her be burnt. Now Yehudah still has authority over her, because she's a part of his family. She's married to his 2 sons who have died. But he still has authority over her. And he's going to bring her in, and he's going to question her. He's not just going to jump to conclusions. When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man unto whom these things pertain, am I with child? And said also, Look, I pray thee, whose these are, the seal, and the cloak, and the staff. Then Yehudah knew them, and said, She is more righteous than I, for she hath done it, because I gave her not to Shelah my son. So he lay with her no more. Now when the time was come that she should be delivered, behold, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in travail, the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound a red thread around his hand, saying, This is come out first. But when he plucked out his hand again, lo, his brother came out, and the midwife said, How hast thou broken the breach upon thee? And his name was called Peretz. And afterward came out his brother that had the red thread about his hand, and his name was called Terach. Now the word Terach is one of the words where we get variations of the color red in Hebrew from, and Peretz means a breach, something that's broken through. This is another version of a name for Kepha. In the Aramaic, it is another version of the word that has to do with a breach. Now, Yehudah owns up when he sees the items that he's left behind, and he admits that the children are his, and he owns up to it. Now he has not provided his son, so he now fills that role. Now the other aspect why he did not recognize Tamar was because of the veil. And that is why no one, when they speak Torah, is ever supposed to have their face covered. Your head covered is a different matter than your face. Now we do not we do not feel that we can necessarily say that you should cover or you shouldn't cover. It's kind of vague in that area. We choose to cover the men in our group, but we don't make anybody that comes to visit, or even if they want to join us. We don't have any rule pertaining to that. Now Yosef was brought down into Egypt, and Potiphar, an eunuch of Pharaoh's, and his chief steward, an Egyptian, bought him at the end of the hand of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him thither. And Yahweh was with Yosef, and he was a man that prospered, and was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the master was with him, Yahweh, and that Yahweh made all that he did to prosper in his hand. So Yosef found favor in his sight, and served him, and made him ruler of his house, and put all that he had in his hands. Yosef is an honest man, and a hard-working man, and Potiphar notices this. And from that time that he had made him ruler over his house and over all that he had, Yahweh blessed the Egyptian's house for Yosef's sake, and the blessing of Yahweh was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. Therefore he left all that he had in Yosef's hand, and took account of nothing that was with him, save only of the bread which he did eat. And Yosef was a fair person and well favored. This description is telling us that Yosef was a nice-looking man. The women would find him attractive. Now, therefore, after these things, his master's wife cast her eyes upon Yosef, and said, Lie with me. But he refused, and said to his master's wife, Behold, my master knoweth not what he hath in the house with me, but hath committed all that he had to mine hand. There is no man greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept anything from me, but only thee, because thou art his wife. But then can I do this great wickedness, and do sin against Elohim? And albeit he spake to Yosef day by day, or she spake to Yosef day by day, yet he hearkened not unto her to lie with her, or to be in her company. Then on a certain day Yosef entered to the house to do his business, and there was no man of the household in the house. Therefore she caught him by his garment, saying, Sleep with me. But he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and got him out. Now when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled out, she called unto the men of her house, and told them, saying, Behold, he hath brought in a Hebrew unto us to mock us, who came in to me for to have slept with me, but I cried with a loud voice. And when he heard that I lift up my voice and cried, he left his garments with me, and fled away, and got him out. So she laid up his garment by her until her master came home. Now I have seen many cases in television shows and movies, and even short little clips that people use in their ministries and stuff, when I happen to come across them. I think this is the equivalent of the multicolored garment. The multicolored garment has ended up with his father Yaakov, but he's been given some garment apparently by Potiphar to signify his authority. So this is the garment that has been left behind. Yosef has fled, and either the garment has fallen off, she's pulled it off, or he's laid it down. And so this is how she ends up with it, because he hurries up and flees in the house, because she is apparently aggressive, going after him. Then she told him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came into me to mock me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment with me and fled out. Then when his master heard the words of his wife, which she told him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, his anger was kindled. And Yosef's master took him and put him in prison, in the place where the king's prisoners lay bound. And there he was in prison. But Yahweh was with Yosef, and showed him mercy, and got him favor in the sight of the master of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Yosef's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did, that he did. And the keeper of the prison looked unto nothing that was under his hand, seeing that Yahweh was with him. For whatsoever he did, Yahweh made it to prosper. Another thing I want to touch on is the word eunuch. There are three definitions for the word eunuch. One is someone who's born deformed, has no testicles, or they're not functional, they don't produce any seed, or one who has been castrated. Many times this is what governments would do when they would conquer another people. They would castrate the males, especially that they used in their positions in palace service or whatever. And the third is someone who simply is not having sex. So those who believe that the eunuch always is somebody who's completely incapable of having sex, no. The other aspect of the eunuch who's not having sex is someone who doesn't have any offspring because they're not having sex. And after these things, the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their master, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry against his two officers, against the chief butler and against the chief baker. Therefore he put them in ward in his chief steward's house, in the prison and place where Yosef was bound. And the chief steward gave Yosef charge over them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. And they both dreamed a dream, either of them his dream in one night, each one according to the interpretation of his dream, both the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And when Yosef came in unto them in the morning and looked upon them, behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in his master's ward, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? Who answered him, We have dreamed each one a dream, and there is none to interpret the same. Then Yosef said unto him, Are not interpretations of Elohim? Tell them me now. So the chief butler told his dream to Yosef, and said unto him, In my dream, behold, a vine was before me. And in the vine were 3 branches. And as it budded, the flower came forth, and the clusters of grapes waxed ripe. And I had Pharaoh's cup in mine hand, and I took the grapes and wrung them into Pharaoh's cup. And I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Then Yosef said unto him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee unto thine office. And thou shalt give Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the old manner, when thou wast his butler. But have me in remembrance with thee, when thou art in good case, and show mercy, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me to Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring me out of this house. For I was stolen away by theft out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing. Wherefore they should put me in the dungeon. And the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, and he said unto Yosef, Also me thought in my dream that I had 3 white baskets on mine head. And in the uppermost basket there was of all manner baked cakes, baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon mine head. Then Yosef answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days shall Pharaoh take thine head from thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee. And so the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership, who gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Yosef had interpreted unto them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Yosef, but forgot him. Now, if you'll notice here, it said they had angered Pharaoh. Now, it never said what they did. But you notice there was a vine in 3 days, and there were baskets of bread in 3 days. Remember, Yeshua said, He is the vine and we are the branches. He's also the bread. 3 days and 3 nights. Bread, in a way, lied in a tomb. 3 days and 3 nights. The sign of Yonah, the prophet. Yonah, whose name means dove. And a vine in 3 days. Resurrection. One dies and one lives. Yet there's a symbol of both of these events in what Yeshua did that day there on the stake. Now I wanted to point out back again once to the garment or the coat of many colors. And the Reform Rabbi W. Gunter Plaut, when he did the Chumash for the Reform Jews, this is what he said about it. Interpretations have been offered about the meaning of pasim, that the tunic was needlework or long sleeve or ornamented or displayed a multicolored design or had other distinctive features. According to 2 Samuel 13:18, such a garment was worn by virgin daughters of the royal house. Whatever it was, it displayed Yaakov's preference for Yosef and deepened his brother's jealousy. This affection most likely sprang from the father's love for Rachel, whose firstborn he was. Later, after Yosef's presumed death, Yaakov's preference is transmitted to Benjamin, Rachel's second son. And that is a basic premise of how most of the Jews look at it. That it's not necessarily ever going to be quoted as a garment of many colors. In fact, most of my translations that are of Jewish undertaking that have been printed by different organizations of sects within Judaism, the Hasids and the Orthodox and the Conservative and the Reform, they each have a little bit of their own way of how they look at this garment, long sleeve, whatever. And it's usually not listed as multicolored as it is in most of the Christian-oriented translations. But as you notice the theme of this story, one brother is sent down into a land. He's captive. It's even distant relatives that hand him over and sell him to the Egyptians. But he ends up being a savior in the long run. He's sent down there with a mission that he doesn't even know about. His dreams have told him, but he doesn't even know how these dreams are going to come out. He doesn't know that they're going to take place in Egypt. One of the themes of the saga of Yosef is when the 10 tribes are in exile, that's where they will have real authority. But when we return, we will be under the king of Yehuda, Yeshua. Every tribe has its purpose and its place, and it will continue to have so in the kingdom. Those who teach that everybody is going to be of equal standing do not know Scripture at all. And this ignorance will cause a great deal of problems. Now, I am one of many who believe in the greater Exodus. It is the only theme in Scripture. There's nothing about going to heaven. There's nothing about leaving this planet. He created this planet and He created us out of it. Why would He destroy the very thing that He created us out of? It makes no sense. And Yah is logical. You know, one of the first aspects of studying Scripture is to take it literally, or the Peshat level. And the only time you don't take the Peshat level is if it tells you it's not literal. Yosef is fruitful, multiplying, adding. The Torah tells us that the descendants of Ephraim especially will become a multitude while in exile. And the prophets tell us that the exile will not end until it's time. We believe, by some of the calculations taken from various places in Scripture, we're pretty close to that time. It also speaks of Yehuda. And Yehuda will not be able to defeat the enemies that are trying to strike it down. And I'm speaking of our Jewish kinsmen right now who are living in the land. they're not going to have any victory until the other 10 tribes are brought home, because the numbers are what's going to help deliver the victory. And the numbers are going to be a huge surprise to everybody, even to those who are among that multitude that return. Another aspect about the Exodus that I find a concern of my own is, you know, I was brought up reading the Torah, even though I didn't know I had any Jewish ancestry until I was over 40. But, you know, I was familiar with the stories. You know, one of the things I see forgotten is not everybody who left Egypt was a believer, but only those who are willing to obey finally got to go in the land. So, on this journey, brothers and sisters, don't expect that everybody is going to be on the same page. Some of them have never even opened the book. So, don't be surprised when you find some people that have no clue what's going on. They see something's happening and they better get on board, so they jump on. Even the Egyptians, some of them did that. The mixed multitude is a multiple aspect word. It is the word Arav, both rooted in the same thing. Mixed could be people who have more than one ancestry. And at the time that the Exodus occurs, to be mixed meant you were either of Shem, Ham, or Yafet's descendants, and you married somebody who was from one of the other two sons' ancestral lines. You were not mixed if you were an Israelite and you married an Ishmaelite. That is not what it means, because they're family. Notice how Genesis 35, 9 to 13, which is from last week's portion, is playing out. Unfolding as Israel's sons will take on Gentile ways as we move into the next few parshas. And I'm going to read those verses, Genesis or Bereshit 35, 9 through 13. And Elohim appeared unto Yaakov after he came to Padan Aram and blessed him. Moreover, Elohim said unto him, Thy name is Yaakov. Thy name shall no more be called Yaakov, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel. And Elohim said unto him, I am El, all-sufficient, or El Shaddai. Grow and multiply. A nation and a multitude of nations shall spring of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. Also I will give the land which I gave to Avraham and to Isaac unto thee, and unto thy seed after thee will I give that land. So Elohim ascended from him in the place where he had talked with him. Now in this verse 11, the word nation and the word nations are the Hebrew words goy and goyim. These words are also translated as the word Gentile, which means the same thing. He's telling Yaakov that your descendants will scatter all over the earth, and they will forget the covenant. And that even rulers in nations will actually be descended from Yaakov and not even know it. We find this out later in the prophets when he says, I'm going to scatter you and let you forget who you even are. And then a time come, I'll start to wake you up, your descendants. We believe that time is now. More and more people are coming every day and going, we started reading Scripture and we realized what we'd been taught isn't what it says actually when we read it. And sadly, one of the things that I have discovered is some people, when they find the Scripture doesn't agree with what they've been taught by their teachers, they choose to ignore the teachers and turn to Torah. That's the goodness. But then you also have the others who choose to trust the teachers and find fault with the Scripture. They want to have their ears tickled. They want to be told something that makes them feel good about themselves. They want to read the parts that tell them don't do the things they're doing. Interestingly, this week's reading falls near the observance of Hanukkah. Every year, this portion falls near Hanukkah. Do you ever wonder if that is the reason so many Torah disobedient Israelites observe Chemosh Day, Christmas? Because it has some of the same trappings. Lighting. Okay? You ever stopped and thought about it? So, remember, if you take the cup, you have agreed to Yahweh, Torah, being the standard you live by. This is why I constantly warn people about the cup. The cup is way more serious than you think. This is not just some ritual that we go through. I'm speaking especially to my Christian brothers who are probably of the house of Israel, many of you. You take this cup and think it's only about acknowledging Messiah. That's not enough. He said, you take this cup, we remember his death. Shaul warns us that those taking the cup not understanding what the cup is about. Many are sick, and some even die. Are any of you out there sick or dying, and you're drinking the cup, and you don't understand why you're in the state you're in? Maybe that's one of the reasons. Because it says when you drink the cup, you agree to Yah's standards, which means you got what's coming no matter what it is. Grace and mercy can, alleviate some of the curse, but it doesn't eliminate it completely. Consequences come right or wrong. I make the right choice, the consequence is something good usually comes of it. I make the wrong choice, the consequence is something bad comes of it. And now I'm going to get into a topic that I hope people will pay attention. It's very serious. So many anti-messiahs or anti-Christ are in the world today, and they are ignorant that they are false prophets. I used to be one before I began to pursue a Torah-based life. Hear me? Every one of us, before we began to pursue a Torah-based life, were anti-messiahs or false prophets. We were guilty. Anybody who's looking for just one doesn't understand what Yeshua and Shaul and Yochanan and Kepha are talking about when they make those warnings. When Shaul uses the term the man of lawlessness, in the Greek that is the word for humanity, not the word for gender man. Stop looking for just one. Remember, Yochanan told us in 1 Yochanan, there were many in his day. We're not waiting for them to come. They've been here for a long time. They've been here for about 2,700 years when it pertains to the 12 tribes. Probably longer, but at least 2,700. One of the very first anti-messiahs was Jeroboam, when he began to change the ways. I'm not saying that others didn't do things before him, but he really set the table. Unfortunately, the individual that prepared the way for him was Shlomo, by his poor choices. A man blessed with wisdom from Yahweh decided to push the limits of what he could get away with. And in the book of Ecclesiastes, he lets us know how stupid his choices were. As I said, I used to be an anti-Messiah or false prophet before I began to follow Torah. Because an anti-Messiah or antichrist is anyone who speaks against what Moshe was instructed by Yeshua to teach Israel. Yeshua is who told Moshe the Torah. And if you've never heard that, remember, Yeshua is the Devar, Logos, Word, or Memra of Yah. Every time the word is used in any of those languages, it's referring to Yeshua. Yeshua is the Word. Since Yeshua is the aspect that created the elements of Genesis or Bereshit chapter 1, as we go to John chapter 1, and those who've never heard this, or you've read this before, and you never paid attention to what it says. Yochanan, John, is taking us back to Bereshit chapter 1 as he begins his writing. In fact, he does the same thing in 1 Yochanan. In the beginning was that Word, and that Word was with Elohim, and that Word was Elohim. The same was in the beginning with Elohim. All things were made by it, and without it was nothing that was made. In it was life, and that life was the light of men. And that light shineth in the wilderness, and the darkness comprehended it not. The darkness he's referring to here is the same darkness he's talking about in Bereshit 1 and 2, in the first two verses of chapter 1. And we move down, and verse 14. And that Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw the glory thereof, as the glory of the only begotten Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. Remember, Yeshua is the Word made flesh. How is he the Word made flesh? No, he's not just a body that all of a sudden the Father says, okay, Yeshua, my Son, I want you to put on the Word, and we're going to form it into skin, and we're going to make it blood, and muscles, and everything else, and bones. No, that's not what it means. The Word made flesh meant the Word came down and inhabited a human. This human was a separate entity from the Ruach. That's why he's fully man and fully Elohim. It's not part Elohim, part man. The human part of him submitted to the Ruach. That's why the human part didn't want to die. Because the human part knew that wasn't going to be good. It wasn't going to feel good. It was going to be painful. That's why Yeshua prayed in the garden, if there was any way possible, let this cup pass me. And he prayed it 3 times, not just once. If this was just, quote, God, the body, who can't sin, who came down and didn't sin, then how am I supposed to take comfort in that? That the being who couldn't sin came down and didn't sin. Oh, what a surprise. The being who can't sin doesn't sin. But I have to have hope, because I have to have a pattern. I have to have someone that he used the human part and said, okay, here's what it's like to be obedient. Here's how to be the son of Elohim, is to obey me and walk in my ways. That's what Yeshua was. Then those who reject the commandments from Moshe reject Yeshua. Oh man, what a thorn in our side. Why would he say something so mean? So we turn to Yachad 5, verses 45 through 47. Do not think that I will accuse you to my Father. There is one that accuses you, even Moshe, in whom ye trust. For had ye believed Moshe, ye would have believed me, for he wrote of me. But if ye believe not his writings, how shall ye believe my words? Yeshua is telling us right here, if we don't believe and do what Moshe said, we don't believe Yeshua. Just believing in his existence, believing in his sacrifice, is not what he's talking about. He said, if we don't believe the instructions that Moshe was given at Sinai, we don't believe Yeshua. Because Yeshua will not say something different. He can't. Because he's the one that told Moshe. He's the word that Moshe heard. Remember, Moshe said towards the end of his life that Yahweh would raise up in the last days a prophet like unto him, like unto Moshe. And most people realize that's Yeshua. Okay, a prophet like unto Moshe can't come and teach something completely different, or he's not like Moshe. Same thing goes for our brother Shaul. If Paul taught that we don't have to keep Torah, he's an anti-Messiah. Plain and simple. He's not. But if you think that he taught us we don't have to do what Yahweh said, then Shaul qualifies as an anti-Messiah. Remember I said that Yochanan told us that Yeshua is the part that had to do with the creation. I'm going to take us now to Exodus chapter 20. And I want you to pay close attention to everything I read. Then Elohim spake all these words, saying, I am Yahweh, thy Eloheka, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have none other Elohim before me. Thou shalt make thee no graven image, neither image similitude of things that are in heaven above, neither that are in the earth beneath, nor that are in the waters under the sea. Thou shalt not bow down to them, neither serve them, for I am Yahweh, thy Eloheka, a jealous El, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, upon the third generation, and upon the fourth of them that hate me. Grace does not do away with this. And showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So he shows mercy to those that love him and keep his commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of Yahweh, thy Eloheka, in vain, for Yahweh will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That is not the end of the commandment. I know most of the Christians, that's all they think the commandment says. But here's the rest of it. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but on the seventh day is the Sabbath, or the Shabat of Yahweh, thy Eloheka. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son nor thy daughter, thy maidservant nor thy maid, nor thy beast nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heaven and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the seventh day and hallowed it. He blessed the seventh day. Not the first day, not the 6th day. He blessed what he did on those days. He did not bless those days. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be prolonged upon the land, which Yahweh thy Eloheka giveth thee. Oh, guess what? That land is no place except the promised land. That he would prolong upon the land which Yahweh thy Eloheka giveth thee is a direction clearly to Israel pertaining to the land of the promise to Avraham. It's not the United States, it's not Russia, it's not South Africa, it's not Japan, Brazil, Argentina, it's not Indonesia, Malaysia, any place else in the world. It's not England. It's not Germany. It's a place in the Middle East that currently is inhabited by our brothers, the Jews. Now, there's more to that land than what they have right now. Thou shalt not kill. Actually, this word is thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maid, nor his ox, nor his ass, neither anything that is thy neighbor's. And I'm going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 5, and I'm going to add a little bit more that he specifically tells Israel about the Sabbath commandment. For remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that Yahweh thy Eloheka brought thee out thence by a mighty hand and a stretched out arm. Therefore Yahweh thy Eloheka commanded thee to observe the Sabbath day. If you don't observe the Sabbath day, you are disobedient, Israel. It is the sign. Deuteronomy 6, 4-9. Most of you have probably heard this before. Our Jewish kinsmen and many of the Hebrew roots people are accustomed to saying this. And hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh, our Eloheinu, or Eloheka, is Yahweh only. Thou shalt love Yahweh thy Eloheka with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt rehearse them continually unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou tarriest in thy house, and as thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up, and thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be frontlets between thy eyes. And thou shalt write them upon the post of thine house, and upon thy gates. Yeshua referred to this, and I'm going to go to that here in just a minute, but I wanted you to understand that Deuteronomy 6, 4-9 is just another way to say the first commandment. So if you don't understand that, you can get led astray. Love him with all my heart and all my soul and all my might isn't a ethereal or mystical or just an emotion. And I'm going to read from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. I'm going to read the entire verse because I know there's some of you out here that have never heard the entire verse. Thou shalt not avenge, nor be mindful of wrong against the children of thy people. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am Yahweh. In a more modern tense, it would say, thou shalt not take vengeance, nor bear a grudge against the children of your people, but shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. If we bear a grudge, guess what? We're not loving our neighbor as ourselves. Now we're going to go to Matthew chapter 5, verses 17-19. And this is one, as I was growing up, that I could not understand why people could not get this verse, taking it literally as it says. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the Torah or the prophets. I am not come to destroy them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say unto you, till heaven and earth perish, one jot or one tittle of the law shall not escape, till all things be fulfilled. The law there once again is the word Torah. Whosoever therefore shall break one of the least of these commandments, and teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall observe and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Said even if we teach someone to do the least, to violate it, and we violate it ourselves, we will be considered least in the kingdom. We'll be in the kingdom, but we'll have a lesser position. Once again, those who believe that we're all going to be on the same equal footing in the kingdom, I'm sorry, Yeshua didn't say that, and the Torah doesn't say that. Now we'll move on to Matthew 22. You know, all those who say, well, Yeshua came along and he did it for us so we don't have to. Then why did he send his disciples out after his resurrection, telling them to go and make disciples? 22, verse 36. Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law, or the Torah? Yeshua said to him, Thou shalt love Yahweh thy Eloheka with all thine heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto this, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hangeth the whole law and the prophets, or the whole Torah and the prophets. You know, I always pictured like a telephone or electrical poles or a clothesline or something. One was the greatest commandment, the other one was the least commandment, and in between them was a wire or a rope or whatever you want to picture. And that held up the rest of the commandments. If we violate any one of the other commandments, we are automatically in violation of the greatest or the second. We do not keep the Sabbath and substitute another day. We've broken all the commandments. We've violated them all. We cut down the line so that the least and the greatest can't hold them up. Anyone who substitutes the seventh-day Sabbath with another day is anti-Messiah, anti-Christ, or false prophet. We can gather and worship him as often as we desire, but we cannot change the rules of Yah's kingdom. Remember, the Shabbat, Sabbath violation involves the death penalty. Those of you who have never heard this, we're going to go back to Exodus chapter 31. And you take that cup, you're Israel. Remember, I told you that. Whether you're obedient or not, you're still Israel. That cup is not with the Gentiles. You may still be living as a Gentile and acting like a Gentile, and a Gentile is not in covenant. He's cut off. Exodus 31, verses 13 through 17. Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, and say, Notwithstanding keep ye my Sabbaths, for it is a sign between me and you in your generations, that ye may know that I, Yahweh, do sanctify you. Ye shall therefore keep the Sabbath, for it is holy unto you. He that defileth it shall die the death. Therefore whosoever worketh therein, the same person shall be even cut off from among his people. 6 days shall men work, but in the seventh day is the Sabbath of the holy rest to Yahweh. Whosoever doeth any work on the Sabbath day shall die the death. Therefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, that they may observe the rest throughout their generations, for an everlasting covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever, for in 6 days Yahweh made the heaven and the earth, and in the seventh day he ceased and rested. The Yahweh here that created is the part we call Yeshua. It is a sign between us and Yeshua that we are Israel if we keep the seventh day, the day that is called in the common world Saturday. It is not Sunday. It never has been. It never will be. Yahweh doesn't change. Oh, and since Yeshua is the aspect that created, we're told in Hebrews that Yeshua is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So if he declared the Shabbat to be the seventh day of the week and no other, and it is a sign of obedient Israel, because a covenant and a testament are the same thing. They're the same word in Greek, diatheka. Those that want to say, well, we're not under the New Covenant, we're under the New Testament. I'm sorry, the New Testament means the same thing as the New Covenant. And we move over to Exodus 35. because I want to make sure that this is incorporated in your mind. I don't know why a lot of my Hebrew roots and Messianic Jewish brethren out there who are teachers do not point this out to people, because they are in slack to not tell you this. They are wrong not to tell you this, because once you take that cup, you're responsible for everything that Yahweh said. I'm saying this to you, brothers and sisters, to warn you, because I don't want you to be ignorant. So our brother Shaul said, it's not that I'm angry at you. I'm angry because nobody's ever told you. Exodus 35, or Shemot 35:1. Then Moses assembled all the congregation of the children of Israel and said unto them, these are the words, once again, which Yahweh hath commanded that ye should do them. 6 days thou shalt work, but the 7th day shall be unto you the holy Sabbath of rest unto Yahweh. Whosoever doeth any work therein shall die. If you take the bread and the cup, you are Israel. I don't care whether you think you are or not, but once you do that, you're liable for all penalties or curses, or will benefit from the blessings if obedient. You know, I wanted to make these statements clear. There will be no Gentiles in the kingdom. You have to be Israel. Obedient by birth or obedient as grafted in. Doesn't make any difference. You're still Israel. And you're still under the same rules. There is not one rule for the Christians and one rule for the Jews. There's not one rule for the Hebrews and one rule for everybody else. There's one rule to be in the kingdom. And the kingdom is where Israel's going to be. The new Jerusalem. Do you want to be one of those in white robes? You know, Revelation says that it's going to involve death. You know, the wages of sin is death, but the gift of Yahweh is eternal life. He didn't say we wouldn't die before we got that eternal life. I know some of you have been told that. Some of you have been told that in John 3:16, it gives us a completely different idea. And this is also the same chapter that being born again is taken out of. And unfortunately, you're not being taught the whole chapter. If you're not aware of John chapter 3, it's a conversation between Yeshua and Nachdamon, or Nicodemus. And Yeshua is talking to Nachdamon. And the way he's talking to him is this: you don't understand this? And you're a teacher of Israel? You're not born again until you die. Now there's a spiritual aspect that we can go through that now. We can start being kingdom even when the kingdom hasn't completely got her yet. And those who do not know it, is the new covenant that's not fully enforced yet either. Ezekiel chapter 37 hasn't happened yet. You think if our Jewish kinsmen are in the land that are fulfillment of Ezekiel chapter 37, I'm sorry, you didn't read Ezekiel chapter 37, and then you're probably ignorant about the two houses also. It says that in Ezekiel 37, it would be a time of peace when Israel's enemies would not be attacking. I'm afraid our Jewish brothers have been attacked almost constantly since the day they declared their status as a nation in 1948. If this was the millennial kingdom, boy, did we get gypped. You know, many of us out here in the nations have at least some Jewish bloodlines in us. We may be mostly Israel because it goes by our fathers. That's what the Torah says. That's why most of us are the 10 tribes who are out here. We'll go back as the 10 tribes. You know, Aharon's wife was a Jew. Aaron's wife was a Jew. Elisheba. But the minute she married Aharon, she became a Levite, and their children became Levites. Yeshua did not become Messiah legally until the woman anointed him with oil. That's why he only calls himself Messiah to one person, a woman who's not Israel, the woman at the well in Samaria. All the other times, it's his disciples or someone else that refers to him as the Mashiach. He never calls himself that because he can't. Because he legally wasn't Messiah yet. He was here to be Messiah, but he wasn't Messiah yet. Those who do not understand that the word Mashiach means to be anointed or have oil poured over your head. If you go back in the Hebrew, you'll notice that Aharon was anointed with oil. King Shaul was anointed with oil. King David was anointed with oil. That made them Mashiachs. If you go back and read that in the text, it uses the word Mashiach to describe what they are. The word Mashiach is not a person, it's an assignment. You've been anointed to do something. That's why Yeshua said to the disciples and the others who complained, well, the expense of this, we could have sold it, we could have gave the money to the poor. And he told them, you don't understand, she's prepared me for my burial. That was his mission, to die. He didn't come here to live. That's why his disciples didn't understand when they kept asking him, will you establish your kingdom at this time? Because probably like most of the people of Judah at that time, they figured when the Messiah came, he was going to raise up an army and they were going to defeat the Romans and drive them out, and they were finally going to have control of the land. But that's not why he came. You know why our Jewish brothers got scattered? Because they kept hanging around the temple and not leaving. They weren't going to get their brother. In fact, many of them had forgotten that they even had a brother. Yosef had been in Egypt for so long. Even the brothers had kind of forgotten about him. And they didn't realize when they stood before their brother that he was Yosef. Many today do not understand the 12 tribes. I mentioned last week that one of the other members of our group and I, we looked at some of the lists on Jewish Gen under Ancestry.com, and we were pulling up different names from our family. I pulled up all of my grandparents and their surnames and went back to several of them that were my great-grandmothers and stuff that I knew what their maiden names were, and in my case, not a single name failed to hit. Showed up in at least one place. In fact, the lowest numbers were my father's, my own surname, Palmer, showed up over 2,000 times. Now, it's not always going to be the name Palmer, but it's going to be people who are related, who are kinsmen of the Palmers, other versions of the name from other European languages and stuff. So if you ever go look at these, like my part of my family that I knew that I had Jewish ancestry in came from my mother's side. My maternal grandmother's maiden name was Geist. But when you pull up the Geist in the camp, the name that you're going to see most often is the name Hecht. H-E-C-H-T. Relatives of the Geist. We're from the same family. Most of them were Gaelic. Might not have even had any Jewish blood in them. When you look at the Polish camps, a lot of them were taken out of an area called Galicia in Poland. Galicia is Gaelic. There's also another region in Spain and Portugal called Galicia. Spelled G-A-L-A-C-I-A. Comes from the same root as the word that we see in the Brit Hadashah, because that's where, in what's modern day Turkey, G-A-L-A-T-I-A, Galatia, that's just a variant spelling. Every place you see this name means that there's Gaelic people there. And people who are related to the Scottish and the Irish and the Welsh and the Bretons and the Cornish and the Manx. Most of the Gaelic people ended up being driven to the British Isles, but at one time the Gaelic people controlled almost all of Northern Europe, from Spain all the way up to Poland and Russia. The Nazis were killing a lot more than just the Jews. I think they were trying to wipe out every part of Israel they could find. The Gaelic people, many of them are descendants of Manasseh. The word Gaelic comes from the Greek word Golan, G-A-U-L-A-N, which is derived from the Hebrew word Golan, G-O-L-A-N. It is the area that the Syrians are trying to control right now, called the Golan Heights. It is the ancestral homeland of the tribe of East Manasseh, the half-tribe that settled on the east side of the Jordan. That's why, if you look, you'll find that the bagpipes originate in the Middle East. It's very interesting. In fact, mostly our Scottish kinsmen, of which my father was Scots-Irish, the kilt is believed to be a remnant of the kind of clothing that the Israelites wore, especially after they left Egypt. Because in the instruction it says, if you take a man's garment in a pledge, return it to him at night, for what will he sleep in? Because if you know anything about the kilt's history, at night they took off the kilt and they used it as a blanket, because all it really is a blanket that they've wrapped around themselves and formed into a kilt. That's why it goes over the shoulder also. It's kind of to hold up their, quote, pants. So, a gentleman that I gave a list of my family names, both Jewish and Gaelic, that I just wanted to pique his interest. And I think he's a Sunday school teacher. He may even be a pastor. But I wanted to pique his interest, and I gave him this. I said, if you're interested, you can look at this. And I showed him where I'd looked up his family name and about 4 or 5 others that work where I work. And especially the ones, even if they had small numbers, that showed up in the 3 places that I picked out of all the list. A place in Spain called Miranda de Ebro. A place in Poland called the Lodz Ghetto. And a list called the Hessen-Gotterman Index. Now, most of those that are going to show up in the Hessen-Gotterman Index are probably Jewish. It's in Germany, the state of Hesse. But the Lodz Ghetto and Miranda de Ebro, Gaelic names show up there quite heavily. And when it dawned on me why they were showing up there, see, I knew they were part of the house of Israel, but I'd forgot about Galatia. I knew about Galatia in Spain and in Poland, but I'd forgot about it. And I looked up a place called Volhynia, and it gave me the answer, because when I pulled it up, it said it's a region also known as Galatia. And it was like, duh! I knew that. I was just spending so much time focusing on the Gaelic names, I forgot about Galatia. So many of you might want to rethink about the Holocaust and quit thinking about it maybe as just a Jewish slaughter, but a slaughter of Israelites, period. Have a little compassion if you've never had compassion for our Jewish kinsmen, because some of your kinsmen may have been there too and you didn't know it. Who are our brothers? Did the brother go off? We sold him off because he was a nuisance. And years later, we need some food when we go to Egypt. Like we are now. We're in Egypt now. Wherever we are, we're in Egypt. Mitzrayim means to be hemmed in, to be fenced in. We're not home. And I want to go home. I long for the day to go home. So I hope I've piqued your interest. I hope I've given you some information you weren't aware of. As our brother Shaul commended the Bereans for checking him out, check me out. Check out every teacher you listen to. Because we make mistakes sometimes. And we need to know it too. So, may Yahweh bless you and keep you. May He keep His hand upon you. May His face shine upon you. And may He give you shalom. Until next time, shalom aleichem.